That's all I'm doing is I'm trying to be nice to the people, and the people can't stick with an investment. I think he's just mocking the whole scene.
Hey, I mean, he's bucking the whole scene while losing tens of millions of dollars. I find better ways. There's better ways to mock fake. Let's just say that.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
Somebody woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. Grumpy McGrumper pants over here.
Yeah, that's me.
That's absolutely you. You showed up so fiery this morning, which I enjoy your fire. So let's just be real clear about that. But how you showed up this morning was a little mean.
I'm telling you, man. I've been sick. I haven't been getting great sleep. It's easy for me to get fiery.
Yeah, but today you added the second layer because you've been sick, but now you're sick and tired.
It's excuses, and a tired man would make excuses like that. So
yeah, put that on a t-shirt. You know who else is being mean? This is a human being here who has come through with zero humility ever in the past, has a little bit of anger, which is the part I love about most, and then gets humor going on. I'm going to play about 30 seconds-ish of a clip, and then I just want then I want to give a little background, a little context, and then we can discuss. You ready for it?
Mm-hmm. I tried to buy a real thing with real liquidity with Jail Stool. You're so dumb. You crypto guys, so small, so short-sighted. Let me get real liquidity from outside your crypto world. You think people know how to use a Phantom wallet and how to use Moonshot and all this shit? They don't. I have 100,000 people holding my token and I'm bringing people in. Who's going to play this game if you guys are sniping them the second it goes up a little bit? Let the thing roll, you morons.
Okay. All right. Here's the context. There's so many beeps. There's so many
This
beeps.
is a family show. What are you doing, Doogles? What are you doing?
It's not me. It's not me. This is Dave Portnoy. Now, Dave Portnoy, people probably know him from Barstool Sports, outside of the whole world of investing. In the world of investing, like I said, brings zero humility. He plays this character, might be himself, but it feels like a character. Plays this character of aggressive, angry, confused about the world. I find it to be a lot of fun. What he's talking about right here is he released a coin called Jail Stool. Mm-hmm. Now, Jail Stool, and there's a great part that's coming up that if you want, I can play another 30 seconds that has phenomenality, or I can talk to it. Jail Stool, at a point, was up over $220 million in market cap. Mm-hmm. It's now at about $46 million in market cap. And that's why he's angry. What he's saying is the Presidente, which is what he's calling himself, because it's Jail Stool. The Presidente is bringing liquidity into this crypto market so that the masses can participate.
I'm cutting you off here. This is a real investing show. We don't have to talk about this nonsense. Two, this is complete garbage. For the folks that don't know, the reason it was called Jail Stool is because Jail Stool is he joked that he would go to jail for pumping a Solana coin. Now, he did say that he was going to put a decent investment in and let it ride. So he was trying to turn this into something. But okay, he's a Michigan grad. He is certainly a character. I don't necessarily think he's checkered past, whatever. He's intelligent enough to know what he's doing. And the fact that he called it Jail Stool, knows that it's a pump and dump scheme for 90+% of people, even if he has the hypothesis it's not. His rant there, what'd you say? He's playing a role? Like, this is completely stupid. I can't believe we are even talking about all this. He deserves what he gets. This happens to everyone, including multiple presidents, because the president of Argentina did this unintentionally with a tweet. I just read it this morning. All this stuff is complete garbage. It is so sad. There are people that are losing real money because they don't understand what's going on here.
And I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here, saying that I do think that this is a full role that he's playing. I think he is mocking the whole situation that's going on here. He goes on here to say, he's like, how is this going to crash? But Fartcoin is so much bigger. Like, explain this to me, people. And I think that the whole point is saying that even in an attempt to do, he's just a man trying to bring liquidity into the market. That's all I'm doing is I'm trying to be nice to the people, and the people can't stick with an investment. I think he's just mocking the whole scene.
Hey, I mean, he's mocking the whole scene while losing tens of millions of dollars. I find better ways. There's better ways to mock things. Let's just say that. Sorry, even taking it away from Barstool, like, I think this is sad. I think we've joked about it on the show a bunch. Everyone likes the fart coin jokes, but this just is nonsensical now. And there are people, I don't know what percentage, if it's 10% or 20%, they don't realize they're not a part of the joke and they're losing real money because they're not a part of the joke.
I agree with that point. I agree with that point. That's what I chose to see here. And maybe I'm just seeing what I want to see.
I like that. From that perspective, it's kind of fun. And got to bring this back, though. There is an article that I loved this week.
Oh,
Loved. And we have to talk about it. It's by Eugene Ludwig. Now, I'll start with a criticism. This article.
This is the Grumpy McGrumpy Pants I was talking about. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This article is like amazing and believable, and it tells so much about what's happened in the past 12 months in our country. But the timing's a little interesting because if you had all this data that basically predicts the election and tells us so much about our current economy, it would have been amazing to hear about it like 3 months ago. We did not. So maybe that's a little suspicious. Here is the fact that literally I'm in a chair right now. I will be out of this chair as soon as I read this fact, Doogles. Near record low unemployment figures were reported before the election, 4.2%. However, according to Eugene and his team of analysts, if you filter the statistic to include unemployed people who can't find anything better than part-time work or who make a poverty wage of below $25,000 per year, that percentage is actually 23.4%. In other words, nearly 1 in every 4 Americans is functionally unemployed today. Okay, so before the election, we talked a ton about this is weird. This doesn't make any sense because all the statistics we see from federal parties say the economy is basically the best in the world and at historical greats. And then that's not how people voted at all. People voted for change. I have been baffled by this, and I've been looking to better understand what happened. This is an incredibly interesting stat.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm going to give you a little benefit of the doubt because I think this morning you need more cuddling and love than normally. So I'm going to give you a little cuddle bug. However, there's one part of me that agrees with the fact that this is interesting to break it down. There's another part of me that's like, duh. So which one do you want? Do you want a cuddle bug?
No, bring some heat already. I'm ready to go. Like, this is important. This is an incredibly important thing to understand. And Eugene is the former U.S. Comptroller of Currency, and he's the author of The Vanishing American Dream, a frank look at economic realities in facing low and middle income Americans. He is an expert in the space. So tell him how he's wrong already.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell him how he's wrong. I said duh. That doesn't mean eh. This is just duh. Duh. Not ja rule. Duh rule. Here's the situation. If you ignore the specifics of what he's stating, because I haven't seen that data, the specific data before, and just go to the baseline of what he's talking about here. He says, if you look at something in aggregate, it doesn't tell the whole story. You need to look at it in piecemeal. Duh. And I agree with your point that you brought up around what we were talking about a few months ago, but we also said, we've been talking about how the aggregate data does not reflect what's happening with every consumer. We broke down different income brackets in one episode and looked at
completely
right. And that's basically what this is saying. One of the biggest things that I want to see that was missing here, but I think he probably has, is I would love to look at this over time. I think looking at this over time is super helpful because just from looking at 1 year of 4% unemployment and looking at that relative to 15 years ago or 10 years ago, the 3%, 4%, whatever it was then, we don't know what the breakdown was then. So how different is this?
Well, and I will read the book. I think this article, there was an overarching guide towards this is different than 1985 because people weren't driving Uber in 1985. So I don't know when that changes, if it's 2015 where the statistic starts to break down in this way or what, but comparing 4% unemployment to something 20, 30 years ago, it's kind of broken. Now, I don't want them to stop the standard methodology. But I want, like you're saying, to give me the standard methodology, but then give me more information on top of that, more layers.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll bring up one other point, but to get to the aggregate point, like looking at his inflation number, he also looks at inflation and says that if you take out I'll call them luxury goods, I think he had another term as well, but take out luxury goods from the overall CPI, Consumer Price Index,
Yep.
and just look at what the average American, I'll call it, buys, you're looking at more like 9% inflation versus 4% inflation in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
This again is one of those things where you go, yeah, if you just look at people that buy eggs, inflation is so much higher if you just look at people that buy eggs.
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah, at the moment. But, and it's not criticizing the methodology. All I'm saying is that when you look at something in aggregate, yes, it's different than when you break it down, and it's super helpful to break it down. So I'm glad they did. Another point that I'll bring up is what this misses. It's not his point, but I think it's an important one. What this misses are the other things that people simply didn't believe. If you go back to the conversations that we had around people not believing the economy, they also believed that the stock market was down. And like, that's just a fact. And here's what I'd say, if you break that apart as well, you can follow the same methodology and go, actually, if you didn't own Tesla, Nvidia, the Mag 7, yeah, the stock market was down for you. And so then you come up and say, actually, the stock market was down for the average American. Sure, I think you can say that. But in aggregate, that's not the case.
Very, very good. I guess I've been looking for additional pieces of this puzzle because when we looked at the data at the highest level, it said best economy in a long time. And the folks that I was interfacing with on a weekly basis were feeling best economy in a long time.
Yep.
And clearly that's not what a lot of other people were feeling. And I've just been looking for additional data.
Yeah.
So this, again, I wish you would have wrote it 4 months ago, and I wish it would have been better articulated then. But I really enjoyed this because it helps me learn. It helps me see all sides of the equation in a way that was opaque to me. Yeah. And I was looking and I was trying to understand what I was missing. And this is part of it. I love your example about the stock market. I would go even further. When you go out on the streets and ask someone if the stock market's up or down, and they say down, even though it had 2 record years in 2023 and 2024, it's probably that they say down because they don't own stocks at all. It doesn't matter to them. It's not because they picked the wrong stocks, right?
Yeah.
So you and I are sitting over here making money in investments. We know exactly what's happening, but we might be the weird ones, is my point.
Yeah.
Or the minority there.
Yeah. I think your point is spot on. And it does go back to in November, one of the conversations that we had was after the election, we were discussing how obviously, I'm going to say obvious, I don't know if we said that word then, but obviously things are so much worse off than we can see.
Yes.
And I do agree that having data that can give signals, like more specific signals for what that might mean and what that looks like, I think is super helpful. Looking at this longitudinally would be really helpful. To your other point, this coming out in August or September would have also been quite helpful because the data existed then. And so it is interesting timing. So things in aggregate, important to look at, also break things down. And I love that they did that. So I agree with that point.
It's really good. I was looking exactly for the luxury goods he excluded, but it doesn't detail that there. He just talks about how he removed the items that could be excluded for a low to middle income family.
Yeah.
And did get even hotter inflation numbers for your bare necessity goods. It all adds to the story.
Yeah. It's not hard to imagine. I gave the example on eggs, which someone that only eats eggs is a ridiculous example. But you can picture that when you using the phrase you just use bare necessities, think about someone who, and this again, I think this is fairly standard or standard enough that people can resonate with it. If you rent your apartment, you live in wherever, Tampa, you rent your apartment, and your life consists of you go to work, you come home from work, you go grocery shopping, and you rent your apartment. And that is generally most of the spending happens in that realm. Groceries are up like 20+% or so. Rent is up 20+% or so. And so all of your spending,
your personal CPI is up 20+%.
Exactly. And that's what matters, is the personal CPI.
This term, functionally unemployed in America today, Again, I want more data, but saying 1 in 4
Yeah.
Americans is functionally unemployed is crazy. I can't get my head around it. But I will tell you, so sorry, I try not to do too many personal stories, but I've seen this, and this is another reason I love this article. The last 2 Lyft rides I've had going to and from the airport. One was with my family on a family vacation, and a lady pulled up who had effectively been living in her car, and
Wow.
we got in, and it was a horrible Lyft ride. Did I give her a bad review? No, because I felt sorry for her, right?
Yep. Yep.
The other one coming back from the airport on a business trip was non-native English speaker, nice enough guy whose car died halfway through the trip. And did I give him a bad review? No, because I felt bad because he was clearly in a tough situation. Like, I've seen some of this, but I
Yeah.
didn't know how to contextualize it. And it's unfortunate, is what it is. I don't like it.
It's very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. And, one of the things I don't like the fact that the Biden administration was completely blamed for the inflation that hit. And the as well-meaning as it was, because I do think it was well-meaning of Biden when he first came in. Remember when we had an episode whose title was something like Biden's coming in hot. It
Yeah.
was something like that. When you look at when inflation started to go up in 2021, it was fairly early in the year. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like in March, April. When inflation starts to go up, it was like 5% range, something like that at that point. So coming from 2 to 5 is pretty big. The causes of that happen well before. Inflation's quite a lagging indicator. And I'm also not going to blame the Trump administration for that. This was coming off of a year in 2020 where we were trying to save the economy. So there was a lot of spending, government spending, that happened in 2020. I think that was largely responsible for the inflation that we saw in early 2021. And again, there's no blame there. I just think that was more of the cause and effect.
Mhm.
And then the Biden administration came in and started wanting to spend a lot on infrastructure, which is a thing that I think the US needs spending on. And maybe at the point where you're like, I have $1 in my pocket isn't when you should buy the new car. Like, timing matters on some of these things. And at the same time, you had Powell and co. that were calling everything transitory.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of things that were happening right there. But my broader point is I think that we oversimplified a lot of the finger pointing that was happening at various times, and there's so many causes to this kind of stuff.
Agree. Here's what I would say. If your example of the person living in Tampa, if their personal inflation is 28%, and you represent either party and you're sitting in Washington, D.C. going, oh, look at these fancy stats from the Fed that say it's only 4%, people are going to say,
Yeah. You're gonna get a middle
no,
finger.
screw you,
Yeah.
as fast as humanly possible. And I think it's so easy to see now, but that's what happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
People said, I don't believe your stupid statistics. I know what's happening to me. And
Yeah. And the one last thing I'll say. So this reminds me of a book called What's Our Problem, written by Tim Urban. If people look at the blog Wait But Why, if you don't, it's worth looking at from time to time. Tim Urban writes this blog called Wait But Why. He wrote a book called What's Our Problem. The central theme of the book is why can't we talk anymore? Like, we don't talk anymore because what happens, going back to the finger pointing, is the conversation is like this. My inflation is 20%, so therefore inflation's 20%. No, you're an idiot. Look at the number. Inflation's actually like this. This is the conversation that we have. He goes, "What, you just called me an idiot?" No, I feel this every day. I'm not an idiot. Well, you must be because I checked out the data and look at the academic data. Like that is not a conversation. And so I do think that that's a lot of what's happened. Also, what's our problem? Worth reading. It'll make you a little bit upset. There's actually one chapter that Tim Urban opens up. He goes, writing this chapter will probably end my career. And I was like, more power to
why
you.
will it make me so upset, Doogles? Explain.
It won't make you so upset. It will make folks so upset because the book talks about the things we don't talk about.
Okay.
And so therefore you lift the curtain a little bit and go, ooh, okay, I didn't realize you were hiding back there, little monster. And that's what happens. Remember Little Monsters? Remember that movie? Howie Mandel under the bed? That's super creepy.
I don't remember that at all. Lucky
Maybe
for me. Can we keep it moving? Can I keep things hot? Because I'm hot
Oh,
about one other thing.
absolutely.
going back almost 15 years, I've had people come to me and say, "Do you see what Jamie Dimon said?" And I've always been like, "Why do I care?" That's just a me thing. That's just a me thing. He has an epic rant that I really enjoyed and think he's right on. I don't know if you want to play this on the show, Doogles, but there's a 90-second clip of him talking about return to office stuff.
Okay, we'll play the audio. Yeah, I think it's more like 2 minutes versus 90 seconds, and then we'll discuss. All right?
Okay.
Let's go for it.
A lot of you were on the Zoom, and you were doing the following, okay? Looking at your mail, sending texts to each other about where the other person is, okay? Not paying attention, not reading your stuff, and if you don't think that slows down efficiency, creativity, creates rudeness, and stuff, it does, okay? And when I found out that people are doing that, you don't do that in my god meetings. You go to meeting with me, you got my attention, you got my focus, I don't bring my god phone, I'm not sending texts to people, okay? It simply doesn't work. And it doesn't work for creativity. It slows down decision making. And don't give me the work from home Friday works. I call a lot of people on Friday. There's not a goddamn person you get a hold of. But here are the problems, okay? And they are substantial, okay? Which is the young generation is being damaged by this. They may or may not be in your particular staff, but they are being left behind. They're being left behind socially, ideas, meeting people. In fact, my guess is most of you live in communities a hell of a lot less diverse than this room. Every area should be looking to be 10% more efficient. If I was running a department of 100 people, I guarantee you, if I wanted to, I could run it with 90 and be more efficient. I guarantee you. I could do it in my sleep. And the notion, these bureaucracies, I need more people, I can't get it done. No, because you're filling out requests that don't need to be done. Your people are going to meetings they don't need to go to. Someone told me to approve some of his wealth management that they had to go to 14 committees. I am dying to get the name of the 14 committees. And I feel like firing 14 chairmen of committees. I can't stand it anymore. Now, you have a choice. You don't have to work at JP Morgan. So the people of you who don't want to work at the company, that's fine with me. I'm not mad at you. Don't be mad at me. It's a free country. You can walk with your feet. But this company is going to set our own standards and do it our own way. And I've had it with this kind of stuff. And, I come in, I've been working 7 days a week since COVID. And I come in and where's everybody else? But they're here and there and the Zooms don't show up. And people say they didn't get stuff. So that's not how you run a great company. We didn't build this great company by doing that, by doing the same semi-disease everybody else does.
Again with the expletives. Come on, people. What's up with all the expletives today?
Give me your reaction to that.
I have a few different reactions. I'm going to start with the part that I agree with the most.
Mm-hmm.
The part I agree with the most is the people being left behind. There was a conversation, young people being left behind. Conversation I had, this was probably 3 years ago, with someone at work, and we were discussing, it was all pontification. We were discussing, does the remote environment stick? Do we go back to the office? And the thing that we were discussing was that not because of all the desires necessarily that people have, but because of the need of the next generation to be mentored, to understand the culture of organizations, that there's likely to be a return to office. Maybe there's something that's hybrid, but likely to be. That part I agree with the most. I do think that young people are being left behind. Sometimes they know it, sometimes they don't. We discussed on this podcast the woman I was talking to, I think she was 23 or 24 years old and was trying to find a company where she could go into the office. Like she was like, I have not, since she left college and started working, I think she might have been a little older, 25, 26. Since she left college and started working, she had never been to an office. She had never met one of her colleagues in person. And she's like, I'm just trying to find a job where I can meet my colleagues. And I think there's so much that comes from that. So I fully agree with that part. I'll start there. I have a lot of other reactions, but I'm gonna start with that one.
I mean, I love that audio because you can hear the tone, you can hear the cuss words, you can hear. I've been in those meetings with those types of people and had those conversations. I think he's like 99% right on absolutely everything he says. Now, his frustrations are interesting. His complaint at the very end, this is just a nitpick, but about how he's been working 7 days a week since COVID. The dude makes $100 million a year and was suggested that he could run for president. The dude can do anything he wants in life. He does not have to be. He acts like someone is forcing him to be locked in the office for 7 days a week. He could ride off into the sunset. He has more optionality than almost anyone on earth. So that cracks me up. He clearly wants to be the leader of one of the world's largest companies because he could
Yeah.
do anything else if he didn't want to be. So that gripe is funny to me. I love that he says our company is going to set the standard and that's not for everyone. I also love that it seems like, based on the tone of his voice, he's okay with people saying, you know what, I actually don't want to work 7 hours a week. I'd like to hang out with my family. Like,
Hold on. Did you
because
just hold on? Did you say 7 hours a week? Because
sorry, seven
no,
days
I
a
know.
week. He's
Yeah.
totally right about what happens like your average Zoom. Totally right. And it's hilarious that someone with that much power sees that, because you would think if you're meeting with JP Dimon over Zoom, you are not. Did I just say JP? Jamie. I mixed JP Morgan and you're not looking at your cell phone, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it sounds like people are. For him, I just think that's a really fun insight into
Yeah.
this whole return to office frustration.
I agree. What I'm going to say is too idealistic. So I'm going to admit that. And I think that there's more truth to it than not.
Okay.
One of the problems that I think has occurred, excuse me, one of the problems that I think has occurred here is that CEOs, large company CEOs, have not gotten far enough ahead of the fact that this was going to be the case. And therefore, when they come in so hot that it's kind of like, because the general points that he's making, I think, are right.
Mhm.
And I don't think that the tone is fine. He's the CEO. He can do what he wants. Like whatever. But I don't
Doogles,
think that it's
that's like leaked audio. It's not. This is not him in front of the team.
Yeah, no, but my point, I know my point is that no matter where that is, like I think that like when it gets to the point where he's obviously so angry. This is years of built up frustration.
It's 4 years
Yeah.
of him having this conversation. Everyone's been having this conversation for 4 years.
And this is where the true idealism comes into play. So just smack it down because it probably deserves to be smacked down. But what I believe that people want to work hard. I believe they want to do great work. I believe that. And I believe that they sometimes, especially coming out of the environment we just came out of, need to be shown the why. Like, why me coming into the office? Why does that matter more? Because when I go into the office, I'm just saying, I could see someone being like, I started showing up to the office. When I went to the office, all that happened was I Zoomed from a conference room with other people that weren't in the office. So, like, tell me why I'm there. Show me why I'm there. Architect, like, great work. Architect the value that people get from coming to the office. The whiteboarding. As a young person, architect the mentorship. Like, show me that and do that compounding over the last 3 years. And by 2025, I want to come into the office. But if you come at me hot in 2025, I know, idealistic.
This would be my biggest criticism of the hybrid, because that's exactly what happened. People said, come back to the office, but then half their colleagues weren't in the office. And then they sat on the same Zooms in the office with an hour commute each way. And they went, this is pointless. No, you got to bring everyone back. You got to, in some cases, kill Zoom, like force people. We all did. I'm sure you did this in the hybrid world where you'd have people in the office and they would still not walk the 3 minutes to the conference room. They'd still do the Zoom thing.
Yeah.
Such a bad experience for everyone. So I totally understand why he's hot here.
Yeah.
And your idealistic point is right, but this is one of the most challenging things to articulate to a 23-year-old recent college grad, because if you've never experienced what it can be like, how much faster it can move, you almost just have to say, trust me. And that's it takes 2 years to prove your concept, I think.
Yeah, or it takes 2 years or magical moments.
Yeah.
When you have those magical moments, and maybe it takes 2 years to feel enough magical moments, but when you have those moments where you can walk down the hall and see Jamie Dimon and see that that's a human being, or maybe he pulls
he
the
can
person.
Yell at you in person. I mean, what a treat.
No, it is, but it is a treat. Like that there, I know you're joking, and I know that, but that kind of is a treat, and it's so different than having the Zoom box that pops up that talks to you once a quarter. That's not the three-dimensional human being, but it's to have those magical moments is important. So I fully agree with the fact that what you said earlier when you were like, we need to play the audio. I think that that brought it home. Now, lots of bleeps we got to put in there, so it increases the editing time, but that's okay. Okay, I got one last thing. Reach into that fishbowl. I want to talk about Pershing Square's last investor presentation. This is so much less spicy and interesting now that we've had the last couple conversations, but I'm gonna try and make it spicy. I might even throw in falsehoods just to keep it interesting. So Pershing Square, it's a large hedge fund. It's run by someone that I personally think is an interesting investor and also, I think, has recently just made himself into like an odd social activist of some sort. And I don't mean social activist in the good way. It's like there's like
Eh,
weirdness that's happened. But
I'm
to
with you
me,
there, but who cares about that? Let's talk about his investments.
oh, okay. All right.
I
Sorry.
mean, can we?
No. Yeah. I told you I'm trying to make this spicy so that it's as interesting as the last conversations. And
No, no,
and
move on.
you're like, no. Okay. Okay. So Pershing Square, they came out with their annual investor presentation in the last week or so. And some of it talks about the governance and organization of Pershing. No one cares about that. What I want to talk about are one, the returns that Pershing Square has put out.
Mhm.
Two, I want to talk about the different, at least at a high level, investment philosophies that shifts that Pershing has made. And then I want to talk about some of the individual investments and some of the why. So those are the three things. You cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay. First things first, let's talk about Pershing Square's in performance and contrast this to when you talked about Guy Spear a bit ago. Looking at Pershing Square from inception, this goes back about 20 years to 2004 until now. Pershing Square up almost 2,400%, S&P 500 up a little over 700%. That's a solid difference in performance. I love
Yep.
it. Then they break this down into three different periods. There's the first 11 and a half years. Then there's what they call the challenging period, and now the permanent capital period. And I think that that's a pretty, it's a, it's so stark when you look at the performance that I don't know how much of this is just if you took this chart and gave it to anyone that they would just name those three periods because the chart makes it so obvious, or if they are three legitimately different periods. You know what I
I
mean?
think this is branding, really. I mean,
But but yet and still, I do think that there seems to be a difference though in the last like 3 years, I would say, of the way that Pershing has approached investments versus prior, at least from what Bill Ackman
I
has
mean,
talked
maybe.
about.
And last year's performance was 10%, which
Yeah.
basically all value investors did somewhere less than 10%
Yeah.
in 2024.
And so to that point, as we've discussed this a little bit in the past, but in this they have a chart where they looked at the S&P 500 index and the Standard and Poor's standard index, meaning that it is market cap weighted. So larger companies have a bigger impact on that index and the performance versus the equal weighted index. Last year, equal weighted index up 13% and the overall S&P 500 was up 25%. So what that means is the average stock, goes back to what we talked about earlier in this conversation. The average stock performed worse than the market overall. And what they said with Pershing, he's like, we basically did what we did the average. So to your point, it's like last year it was just the average stock. Like we
Yeah.
effectively held the average stock. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing really to see here. Then the other thing that they looked at right after that, but it follows, is they said if you look at the difference in those two performances over the last couple of years versus the last 12 years, it's becoming more and more so such that the concentration in the market and the outperformance is being driven by bigger companies. I was like, okay, that's not surprising, but I still
Mhm.
think that looking at the data is interesting. All right.
Same
Now,
talking point as everyone else that underperformed in 2024.
yeah.
Exact same.
Now, the point that I don't know that I agree with on here, history will tell, is when he looks at the PE ratios, so price to earnings ratios.
Which
It's at
slide
about,
are you on?
this is slide 35.
35. Okay.
So when he looks at the 10 largest, so these are the big hitters, right? If you look at those companies, 10 largest companies, 27 PE ratio, which is quite high.
Mhm.
You look at the other 490, it's 20. What the takeaway that they have in here, what he says is that there are still solid bargains here. And so for a stock picker, you can outperform within that 490 because there are a bunch of stocks that are still cheap. Here's the thing I don't know. I don't know what my position exactly is, but I think I sway away from that. Is I agree with the general point that there are things that look like bargains right now.
Yeah.
What I don't know is if the market gets hit because of the situation that we're in, that it's going to matter. Like that those bargains may look more bargainy on the other side of this versus the bargains being something that end up going up. I think that's the thing because it implies that.
I love your terminology, but if you force me to pick a side, I'm probably in there's some bargains, and those bargains at some point will be more bargainy. That's where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be more bargainacious. I think that's probably the point. Okay, so individual stocks, should we talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty impressive portfolio, to be honest. Now he does this really. I'm not sure if it's like elementary school thing on purpose, where he's like, "Oh, hey, I bought." Let me find a real live example. Oh, look, I bought Google at $80 a share, and it's currently at 180. And I'm just gonna have this fancy chart that shows how great of a stock picker I am. I actually love this. It's so clever.
It's pretty
And he
great.
does it for almost every pick he has. And it's funny because I've followed a lot of these same companies. Now, at some point, we're going to have to talk about Brookfield because that's a whole thing. But I followed a lot of these companies, and generally, I've been like, I understand why he owns it, but it's way too expensive. And that's another example here would be Chipotle. Like his average cost of purchase at the time of announcement was $8 a share, and it's currently at $58 a share. So he's done well, which his performance shows.
I agree with that. I'm going to pull up the overall like 13F so we can look at holdings here. But here's the thing that was most interesting to me, and you can hit on other parts of it. The thing that was most interesting to me in this was he was talking about the Nike holdings and said, if you look at our 13F, it'll show that we got out of Nike. Actually, what we did was we took our normal common shareholding of Nike and made it into options. So they got out of the common stock and converted that into options. So he said, economically, we are more invested in Nike than we were before, but they bought long-term options on Nike.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But if you look at the 13F, it'll show that we got out. And so that was what I was trying to check to see. So I don't think this is the updated 13F. But that point was like, wow, that's a bigger bet, depending on how it's hedged. I mean, there's so many things with these companies that it's hard to fully look outside in.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Nike. We got in almost at the same time. I think my average entry price is a little lower than his. Let's talk. Can we talk? Actually, this is a PSA to our friends. Email is skippydoogles@gmail.com. Everyone is talking about Brookfield, ticker BN, and I haven't done a deep dive. I haven't read the 10K. I don't know if you have, Doogles, but
nope.
To me, it doesn't scream amazing deal that it seems to scream to everyone else. So there's something under the covers there. It's something to do with carried interest and a lot of other things. If anyone has like a great write-up or hypothesis there, I'd love to hear it because there's something going on there. There's enough buzz around that I feel like it could be a deal, but it doesn't jump off the page at me.
Yeah, and I haven't looked into Brookfield at all outside of reading Pershing's, can't even call it a write-up, Pershing's one slide, I don't know, bulleted thing. And there was nothing in there that made me go, I want to look at this more.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at the 13F through 2024, through the end of 2024. Brookfield is his largest holding at 16%, and he added another like 2.5%.
That's meaningful. Position. That's really meaningful.
In this one, yeah, maybe he's talking about the 13F that will come out 3 months from now, but in this one, he continues to add to Nike. He reduced Hilton, which makes sense to me because I think Hilton is expensive, and Chipotle. Really interesting. This is a fun presentation. I appreciate it. It is you sending it my way.
And to say one last thing on the Nike options piece, moving to options, I think generally it shows more belief in that stock because options are more risky. The reason that he said they made that shift is to free up capital because to get the same economic upside, right, which I think it's actually probably more, you free up capital because of the point before, because then he can buy other stuff. That's a bullish take.
Yeah, he might be freeing up capital to put it into Brookfield. This goes to like that same talking point of my curiosity there. Doogles, I think that's a wrap. I want you to hang out. Maybe we'll do this for premium listeners. I want to talk to you about a few things I did in my portfolio this last week or so.
Okay. So premium listeners, keep listening. For non-premium listeners, thank you for joining. skippydoogles@gmail.com is the email address if you want to give us listener mail, questions, comments, whatever you got. We love it. skippydoogles.com is where you go for all your Skippy and Doogles needs. Thank you, and premium listeners, please stick around.